go like this, people think you're watching the screen and go to sleep. Met before.
I just mentioned it. I saw her at all meetings. How's Mike? What's Mike doing?
He's doing great.
He's doing great.
Doing great. He'd love to see you. Stop in our office. Right over there.
Right over there?
Old music hall. First floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see Mike in church though. And I know Mike's father. Mike's father used to be the town engineer before Mike was. And I guess when Brian came in, Mike went out left. I guess bigger and better things. Delaware. He's a good guy.
Yeah. This has given him the ability to work on a lot of different things. And I think that's been the only value we have. He's the only one.
Town Montgomery, 15 different water districts. They built differently all of them. Some of them are needed, some of them not needed, some of them based on usage. So we're trying to, and we're at capacity. We've been at capacity for the last, 90% of capacity for the last 5-6 years, I guess. And the plant's 35 years old.
It's hard to make it bigger.
Yeah. Well, we just had made a deal with Village of Maybrook. They're picking up 80,000 gallons.
That was something we recommended a long time ago.
Yeah. So we're going to pay them a little bit, not a lot, maybe 1.25 times the rate, but we gave them 300,000 for stuff. We got to get the pipe for it. I think
it's a quick cut.
engineering property for the one.
Connections right there.
Yeah.
It used to be connected.
Oh, it's right there.
District 2, it used to be connected.
Yeah. I don't know why we didn't do it. So it'll buy us some time.
Yep.
And then they're looking at Village of Montgomery, town of Montgomery. They're talking about a $20 million upgrade there. Splitting it. Both if we can get some grant money,
Are you all set?
Thank you, Matt.
You'll have typically 6 people.
At this time, I would like to call to order the public hearing of the Orange County Sewer District Number 1. And at this time, I would ask everyone to please stand for a moment of silence and a pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag Would the clerk read the notice of public hearing?
Notice of public hearing and notice of completion of draft environmental impact statement in accordance with 6 NYCRR Part 617.12, County of Orange. Notice is hereby given that the legislature of the County of Orange, as lead agency, has accepted a draft environmental impact statement, DEIS, prepared in accordance with Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law relating to proposed longevity improvements at the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant, an expansion of the treatment capacity of the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant from 6.0 million gallons per day to 9.0 million gallons per day is adequate with respect to its scope and content for public and governmental agency review and comment. With regard to the proposed project, the following information is provided pursuant to 6 NYCRR Section 617.12. Action and location, Orange County Sewer District Number 1, Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant, longevity improvements and capacity expansion. Type 1 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, Village of Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant and Monroe Interceptor. Lead agency, Orange County Legislature. Address, Orange County Government Center, 255 Main Street, second floor, Goshen, New York, 10924. Contact, Catherine E. Benelli, Chairwoman, Orange County Legislature, Orange County Government Center, 255 Main Street, second floor, Goshen, New York, 10924, 845-291-4800. Further notice is given that the DEIS can be obtained at Office of the Orange County Legislature, Orange County Government Center, 255 Main Street, second floor, Goshen, New York, 10924. Orange County website, www.orangecountygov.com/437-orange-county-sewer-district-1. Offices of the following municipalities: Village of Harriman, 1 Church Street, Harriman, New York, 10926. Village of Kirs Joel, 51 Forest Road, Suite 340, Monroe, New York, 10949. Village of Monroe, 7 Stage Road, Monroe, New York, 10950. Town of Monroe, 1465 Orange Turnpike, Monroe, New York, 10950. Town of Palm Tree, 51 Forest Road, Suite 340, Monroe, New York, 10949. Village of Chester, 47 Main Street, Chester, New York, 10918. Town of Chester, 1786 Kings Highway, Chester, New York, 10918. Village of South Blooming Grove, 811 Route 208, Monroe, New York, 10950. Village of Woodbury, 455 Route 32, Highland Mills, New York, 10930. Public Library serving Villages of Harriman, Monroe, Kirs Joel, Woodbury, Chester, and South Blooming Grove, and the towns of Chester, Monroe, and Palm Tree. Chester Public Library, 1784 Kings Highway, Chester, New York, 10918. Phone 845-469-4252. Monroe Free Library, 44 Mill Pond Parkway, Monroe, New York, 10950. Phone 845-783-4411. Moffett Library, 6 West Main Street, Washingtonville, New York, 10992. Phone 845-496-5483. Uda Misvita of Kirs Joel Library, 48 Bakertown Road, Suite 501, Monroe, New York, 10950. Woodbury Public Library, 16 County Route 105, Highland Mills, New York, 10930. Phone 845-928-6162. Woodbury Public Library, Ida Cornell Brock, 23 Smith Clove Road, Central Valley, New York, 10917. Further notice is given that a public hearing to receive comments relating to the DEIS will be held at the Legislative Chamber of the Orange County Legislature Orange County Government Center, 255 Main Street, 3rd floor, Goshen, New York, 10924, on the 25th day of March, 2024, from 7 o'clock p.m. to 9:30 p.m. on that day. Further notice is given that written comments relating to the DEIS will be accepted from February 2nd, 2024 through April 8th, 2024. Further notice is given that written comments relating to the DEIS are to be delivered to the clerk of the Orange County Legislature, Orange County Government Center, 255 Main Street, 2nd floor, Goshen, New York, 10924, or may be delivered via email by sending comments to jrampen, JRAMPPEN, @orangecountygov.com. The notice was published in the February 21st and February 28th issues of the Hudson Valley Press and the Goshen Independent, the February 22nd and 29th issues of the Times Community Newspapers, Wallkill Valley and Mid-Hudson Times, and the February 23rd and March 1st issues of the News of the Highlands Cornwall Local.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Legislator Peter Toohey, the Chair of the Orange County Sewer District Number 1 Advisory Committee, to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman. Orange County Sewer District Number 1 Advisory Committee. This committee was created by Resolution Number 61 of 2019 pursuant to County Law Section 268. The Orange County Legislature is charged with making determinations relating to the increase and improvement of Orange County Sewer District Number 1, including the replacement of inadequate equipment and/or the acquisition of additional equipment. The permitted capacity of the Harriman wastewater treatment plant is 6 million gallons per day, and on December 20th, 2012, the legislature passed a resolution authorizing the expenditure of $925,000 for the retention of a consultant to develop an engineering facility plan to increase the treatment capacity of the Harriman plant. Subsequently, Delaware Engineering, DPC, prepared and submitted a plan that contained an analysis and evaluation of a number of options for increasing the available capacity at the Harriman plant. The advisory committee was thereafter created to evaluate the facility plan prepared by the engineers and any other studies, reports, and data collected on the Harriman plant, and to report and make recommendations to the legislature relating to information with regard to increasing available capacity at the plant. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to call on Mary Beth Bianconi, partner with Delaware Engineering, to summarize the proposed longevity improvements at the Harriman wastewater treatment plant and expansion of the treatment capacity.
Thank you. As was just said, my name is Mary Beth Bianconi, and I am a partner at Delaware Engineering. Could you just hit the next, like the arrow on that keyboard? The arrow forward, or N for next? Uh-oh. So my name is Mary Beth Bianconi. I'm a partner here at Delaware Engineering, working with the county for about the past decade, evaluating the wastewater treatment plant that is part of the Orange County Sewer District Number 1, located at 71 River Road in Harriman, as well as portions of the collection system owned by the Orange County Sewer District. We're here tonight to conduct a hearing on a draft environmental impact statement, copies of which are here in front of us. This is the text, and then there are two appendices. The document is well over 3,000 pages long and represents years of study and effort, and has been reviewed by the legislature and is ready for public review tonight. Tonight, we'll walk through the state environmental quality review process so we can understand what that is. We'll discuss the proposed project. We'll describe the draft environmental impact statement, and then also discuss the comment process that we're in at the moment. So the State Environmental Quality Review Act is a process through which projects that may have an impact on the environment are evaluated before they occur. The purpose is to describe the environmental setting of the proposed project, identify environmental impacts, mitigation measures that reduce or eliminate potential environmental impacts, explore alternatives to the proposed action, and establish a framework under which the project may advance to construction. Our process for this project has involved several steps already. Back in May of 2020, the legislature notified the public and involved agencies that an environmental review would be conducted for this project. In February of 2021, the legislature, as lead agency for this review, conducted scoping to determine the nature of the environmental impact statement. And in February of 2024, at the regular meeting of the legislature, the draft environmental impact statement was accepted as being ready for public and agency review. The current stage of the environmental review process we are in is seeking comments from the public and involved agencies. That comment period is extending from February 2nd through April 8th. Tonight is a public hearing that was previously noticed to occur here this evening from 7 to 9:30 to obtain oral comments. After this comment period expires on April 8th, the next step in the process will be for us to prepare and publish written responses to all public and agency comments. The proposed project description. So the project is intended to address three major items. One is aging infrastructure. The original plant components were constructed in the 1970s and 1980s and are reaching the end of their useful life. A second is to address regulatory requirements. In 2020, new discharge standards were issued for this wastewater treatment plant, and the existing equipment is not able to meet those standards. And the last is to increase the capacity of the treatment plant in response to demands for new sewer service in the sewer service area. So a little bit of wastewater 101. Wastewater is collected from homes and businesses in a network of pipes that are then eventually delivered to the treatment plant located in Harriman. The larger of those pipes, you can think about it like arteries and veins in the body. The larger of those, like the arteries, are called interceptor sewers. Those are the sewers that convey most of the water to the treatment plant. So part of this project is to upgrade some of those interceptor sewers. Another portion of this project is the wastewater treatment plant itself. And at the wastewater treatment plant, there will be, as has been discussed, longevity improvements to increase the ability of existing infrastructure to continue to function. There will be reuse of existing equipment. There will be regulatory compliance work done, and there will be an expansion that will be conducted. The last component of the proposed project is a variance from water quality-based affluent standards for total dissolved solids and chlorides. We'll get into a little bit of the details of what that entails in a moment. The image that you're looking at is an image of the Harriman wastewater treatment plant. Just to orient everyone, the large intersection that you can see, which is to the east side, is Route 17. I'm sorry, to the south side, essentially. The water body you can see is in Mary Harriman Park. The road that is on the left side of the picture is River Road. The address of the plant is 71 River Road. And there's a small commercial building up top that you can see that is the closest neighbor to this facility. The other thing that I will point out is that the treatment plant was built in phases. Okay. The treatment plant was built in phases. We do have an image of the treatment plant here in the room. If anyone can see it, should we stop? We're ready. Thank you. Yep. All right, so we were just discussing that this is the Harriman Wastewater Treatment Plant at 71 River Road in Harriman. The plant was built in 3 phases, with Train 1 in the center, built in 1977. Train 2 at the top of this image, built in 1987. The difference between 1977 and 1987 was the addition of some communities to the service area, the Moodna communities. So additional capacity was necessary. Each of those trains was constructed as a 2 million gallon a day train. So by 1987, this was a 4 million gallon a day facility. And then about 20 years later, in 2006, an expansion was built, which is at the bottom of this picture, which added another 2 million gallons a day. One of the things that you may notice from this image is that there are 3 different types of technologies that make up the wastewater treatment plant on this site. That is a little unusual, but today the capacity is 6 million gallons a day. The other thing that I will point out is that the space between Train 1 and Train 3 is actually utility right-of-way, which adds a little bit of complexity to working on this site. In 2020, the permit that governs the quality of the water that is treated at the wastewater treatment plant and discharged to the Ramapo River was updated to include new requirements for treatment. This is a pretty long list, but I'll summarize it to say that some of these treatment requirements have to do with the biological process at the wastewater treatment plant and its ability to consume organic matter. Some of these are relative to the ability to reduce the amount of nutrients that are being discharged into the water, so things like nitrogen and phosphorus. Some of them are for constituents that we typically find in groundwater in the area, particularly in our hard groundwater. So those things would include something called total dissolved solids. You'll see that here. It's TDS is the abbreviation, and chlorides, which are a constituent of total dissolved solids. In addition, the permit was updated to include the state's mercury minimization program. That's an element of all wastewater treatment plant discharge permits these days. Number of other monitoring requirements, whole effluent toxicity testing requirements were added to ensure that the wastewater that's discharged from the wastewater treatment plant isn't toxic in the environment. And there were some other more administrative improvements to the permit, as well as some additional sampling. This image is generally the service area for the Orange County Sewer District Number 1. The blue area in the center is the actual sewer district, which is a county district. The pink areas are areas that are also served by the county's wastewater treatment system, but are outside of the sewer district. They're served on a contract basis. Yellow that you can see are other wastewater treatment plants in the area. The project is in part aimed at addressing demand for wastewater in the service area that was just shown. I realize there's a lot of material on this chart. We're not going to spend a lot of time here, but a number of different methods are used to determine additional sewer demand. Among those are polling the communities that are served to ask about any known or likely increased demands in sewer over a 20-year period. That's our planning period. As I mentioned, the wastewater treatment plant's been upgraded about every 20 years, and we're in that 20-year cycle. In addition to that, we have planning factors that we use when we look at things like land use, the amount of land that's available, the availability of public water, environmental constraints such as wetlands, steep slopes, those types of things. So one of the things that you see here down along the bottom of this image is that out 20 years, we're looking at a demand of about 3 million gallons a day. So the proposed project, as I mentioned, the wastewater treatment plant has two pieces to it, the wastewater system. One is the conveyance of wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant. The other one's the treatment plant itself. This particular part of the project description deals with that conveyance. We are recommending that the lower interceptor, which if I can get my little operation to work here, which is this, here's the Harriman plant. This is the lower interceptor, that it is upgraded. It is currently a 36-inch pipe, would be upgraded to a 60-inch pipe, which is a pretty large pipe. And then from point of interconnection, somewhere in the vicinity of, this is the north interceptor, which was recently upgraded. Going in this direction, there would be some additional increase in size, and that would go from a 30-inch pipe today to a 48-inch pipe. So the idea here is that under current conditions, we conducted modeling, and we see that under rainy conditions, because we're getting some rainwater into these pipes, those pipes are very much at capacity. Right now, that's not resulting in any issues, but in the future, as we see increasing sewer demands, that hydraulic capacity, the ability of those pipes to pass water onto the wastewater treatment plant, needs to be increased. These increases that you see, that 60-inch pipe and that 48-inch pipe, are intended not just for the 20-year planning period, but really to the maximum extent that we believe that the Harriman wastewater treatment plant could receive this wastewater. So this is a very forward-thinking aspect of the project. One thing we will note, you can see these pipes do go through our communities. They are on roads. This type of construction is pretty disruptive. So the concept here is to do this upgrade at one time rather than slowly over time, which would be more disruptive to the communities. This is the other portion of the project. I recognize this image is very small. There's copies of it in the environmental impact statement, as well as here in the room. These are the upgrades that are proposed at the wastewater treatment plant itself. I'm not going to go through these in tremendous detail, but the upgrade intends to take trains, what are currently trains 1 and train 2, which would currently be 4 million gallons a day approximately, and upgrade them to be a 7 million gallon a day facility using a different technology, one that the current plant staff is very familiar with and is comfortable with, that would meet the regulatory requirements other than total dissolved solids and chloride, and that would allow some flexibility for future expansion of the facility as necessary. There would be some other improvements made here on the site. One of the ones that I will point out largely for the public is that odor control improvements will be made on the site. In addition to that, longevity improvements to extend the existing structures that will be reused and equipment that will be used so that extend its useful life and continue to reuse existing equipment and facilities. Another important component of this project is the variance from water quality-based effluent limits. As I mentioned, in 2020, this plant received a new discharge permit. Again, the discharge permit determines what the level of treatment is for the wastewater before it gets discharged back into the environment to be protective of water quality in the Ramapo River Basin. The new permit included 2 constituents in it that were not previously present in the permit: total dissolved solids, TDS, and chloride, which is actually a part of total dissolved solids. And those permit limits are 500 milligrams per liter for TDS and 250 milligrams per liter for chloride. So in order to treat for these, our existing treatment systems, our biological treatment systems, and our filter systems that we have on site and that we're proposing do not remove these or reduce them. In order to do so, we would need to construct something called reverse osmosis, which is another type of treatment at the plant. We would treat a portion of the water that comes to the plant. The proposal for a reverse osmosis system is very high capital cost, about $96 million, and it has excessive operating costs at about $25 million a year, which would be for handling high electricity, as well as the reverse osmosis process results in a byproduct, a brine that would have to be shipped off site for treatment. The environmental impacts of reverse osmosis would be very high. As I mentioned, high energy use, tremendous amount of truck traffic, about 30 vehicles a day to deal with that reject water from the reverse osmosis, that brine. And in addition to that, I'll just point out that the wet testing, the whole effluent toxicity testing that's been conducted at the plant shows that the present conditions are not toxic in the environment. So in order to achieve a variance, we would need to meet the standards that are in place under the New York Code of Rules and Regulations, Section 702-17. And those are that a naturally occurring pollutant concentrations prevent attainment of the water quality standard or guidance value. Human-caused conditions or sources of pollution prevent attainment of the standard or guidance value. It cannot be remedied or would cause more environmental damage to correct than to leave in place. And lastly, controls more stringent than those required by Section 750, which is the discharge permit regulations, would result in substantial or widespread economic and social impact. So a couple of notes on this. The total dissolved solids and chlorides that we have in our wastewater treatment plant are actually coming from our groundwater. Most folks in the sewer service area consume groundwater that's either provided by a well on their property or by a public water supply. That groundwater begins with total dissolved solid and chloride levels that are approaching the regulatory standard, if not over the regulatory standard. So an end-of-pipe solution, removing that from the wastewater treatment plant, will not actually address the existing naturally occurrent concentrations. And really what this is hard water. If you live in the sewer district, you're probably experiencing hard water at your home. That's really what we're talking about here. So part of the project is a variance from water quality-based effluent limits. Schedule and cost. So our present schedule has design being implemented in 2024 And through 2026, that sounds like a very long period of time. This is a very complex project. In addition to design, the project will need to be financed, and the county intends to seek loans, low-cost loans and grants, so money that does not have to be paid back to reduce the cost impact of the project, and the permitting of this project will be complex as well, so it's a couple of year time frame. Bidding of the project, this project is certainly large enough to require public bidding, would occur likely in 2027, and construction and startup would expand, hopefully sooner than 2029, but we'll for these purposes, we'll predict this out to 2029. Our capital cost estimate in 2025 dollars is for the sewer interceptor upgrades that we mentioned, the 36-inch pipe, the 30-inch pipe going to larger size pipes is about $44 million. And the Harriman wastewater treatment plant upgrades for aging infrastructure, regulatory compliance, and capital expansion is $156 million in 2025 dollars. And just a quick note, that does not include that $96 million that we mentioned for reverse osmosis, because we're proposing to receive a variance for that, for a total capital in 2025 dollars of just short of $200 million. The new cost to operate this facility, many of the costs will remain the same. One of the more substantial costs would be in electrical on an annual basis. Based on current and reasonably predicted electric rates, would be just shy of $290,000 a year. How are these costs funded? These are paid by all of the users with access to the sewer system in the Orange County Sewer District Number 1 and the contracted communities. Some of these charges are based on gallons used, and others are shared by all. As the project moves forward, there'll be more information regarding how the project will be funded. So the draft environmental impact statement, this very large document that we have in front of us, what does it do? It identifies a number of potential environmental impacts as well as mitigation measures to reduce or eliminate those impacts as much as possible. I'll run through these relatively quickly, and if folks have comments, we can talk about this in more detail. The project is proposed as a multi-year construction project. So the potential impacts of that would be things like stormwater, construction traffic, noise, those kinds of things, particularly in the neighborhoods where the construction is occurring. Mitigation measures would be stormwater pollution prevention during construction, limiting the hours of construction, providing traffic controls, and alike. Water quality impacts. Again, stormwater impacts from construction from opening the ground can be significant, as well as this is an area with a relatively high water table. So to the extent that we are building tanks down deep in the ground, we will need to conduct dewatering, and we will have to control stormwater and dewatering during construction. There are numerous design standards, and there are the discharge standards that we previously mentioned regarding water quality impacts that are intended to reduce or mitigate those. And then very significantly with respect to the variance for total dissolved solids and chloride, one of the requirements of that variance will be a minimization plan. Those will be ongoing efforts that will be conducted by the county sewer district to reduce the introduction of total dissolved solids and chlorides into the waste stream that comes to the treatment plant. One of the other impacts of this project will be cost to users, and a mitigation measure will be the county's efforts to secure low-cost financing and grants to reduce user costs. There's always a potential for odors. This is a wastewater treatment plant, but there is much that we can do to reduce those odors. The project proposes new odor controls. The project proposes to house particularly odorous operations within structures, and operations and maintenance of those facilities is also included in the project. And lastly, the neighborhood and community may experience potential impacts. These could include things like construction-related impacts, traffic, noise, dust, odors during construction, lights, those kinds of things. So there will be construction controls on hours, construction traffic, for instance, limitations on trucks running through any neighborhoods, those kinds of things. There'll be dust controls, noise controls, odor controls, light, particularly during construction. And then in terms of long-term impacts, the project does not propose to substantially change the appearance of the wastewater treatment plant, but will improve operations, particularly with respect to odors. We're getting towards the end of this. The draft environmental impact statement, one of its important aspects is it identifies alternatives to the preferred program. And these are the alternatives, and I'll spend a minute running through them because it's important to outline them. One alternative that is required to be evaluated for all environmental impact statements is the no action alternative. And what we're doing is we're comparing not doing anything to what would happen if we didn't. So not doing anything would result in a failure to achieve regulatory compliance, and additionally to the breakdown of aging equipment, because again, longevity improvements are part of the project. Not doing anything would not address the existing hydraulic restrictions in the collection system that could, if left unaddressed, result in the discharge of untreated water into the environment. And lastly, not doing anything would result in the failure of the sewer district to meet its obligations with respect to sewer service. So the no action alternative does not achieve the project's objectives. Longevity improvements only would have some upside. It would extend the useful life of existing equipment and facilities, and it would meet regulatory requirements provided a variance was also issued, as is part of all of the projects that are proposed. However, longevity improvements only would not increase the capacity of the facility and would be a failure of the Orange County Sewer District Number 1 to meet its obligations to provide capacity for its serviced areas. A number of alternatives were evaluated with respect to technology to add that 3.0 MGD that is demanded in the sewer district over the next 20 years. All of them would meet the regulatory requirements with a variance issued, and all of them would achieve 9 million gallons a day. Some of them would, though, because they would take up a lot of geography on the treatment plant site, they would limit the ability to expand on site in the future to make the plant larger. And with respect to costs, none of them present a better value than the proposed project. We also evaluated alternatives to the variance. This I mentioned previously. Again, the variance is from water quality standards for total dissolved solids and chloride. The alternative to receiving a variance would be the installation of ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis systems. Those could be designed and engineered to meet the regulatory requirements. However, they would have a substantial economic burden on the service area, and the environmental impacts would be significant in terms of energy use and the need to haul the byproducts away to a larger treatment plant likely located on the ocean. In addition, the alternative to regulatory compliance of installing ultrafiltration and reverse osmosis would not address the naturally occurring conditions that are creating the presence of the total dissolved solids and chloride in the environment in the first place. We also evaluated alternatives to expand the treatment plant larger than 9 million gallons a day. In the short term, we evaluated 2 technologies that are capable of achieving at least 16 million gallons a day at the Harriman site. We evaluated one of those technologies, which is the technology that's recommended to actually expand to a potential of 20 million gallons of treatment on the site if it were necessary in the future. And lastly, we evaluated regional alternatives to the expansion of the Harriman wastewater treatment plant. Those included 2. One would be construction of a new 9 million gallon a day wastewater treatment plant on the Hudson River. We would also be constructing around 13 miles of pipe to convey wastewater from the existing sewer service area and the existing Harriman wastewater treatment plant to that potential wastewater treatment plant on the Hudson River. The cost of this project would be around $340 million in 2025 dollars. And there would be some pretty substantial challenges with respect to regulatory approvals and the requirements to acquire land for both the collection system as well as the wastewater treatment plant. In addition to this, we looked at an alternative where we would add the 3 million gallons of needed capacity on the Moodna in a location more close to the existing sewer service area. In this alternative, the 6 million gallon a day wastewater treatment plant at Harriman would need to receive longevity improvements, and a new 3 million gallon a day wastewater treatment plant would be built on the Moodna. That cost is approximately $150 million and is very similar to the cost of adding the same amount of capacity on the Harriman wastewater treatment plant site. However, you would end up with decentralized treatment, would probably have some staffing implications, and you would have to acquire land to construct a wastewater treatment plant. So those are the alternatives that were evaluated. And lastly, as was mentioned in the reading of the hearing notice here, we do have paper copies of the environmental impact statement that you see here presented at all of the municipal offices in the sewer service area. There are paper copies and digital copies available at the public libraries. There is a paper copy located here in the second floor of this building in the legislature's office. There is a digital copy of the draft environmental impact statement on the county's website, as pointed out. And lastly, I'll just encourage everyone, even if you speak tonight, please submit written comments either through the mail or dropping them off to the Government Center here, 255 Main Street, second floor, Goshen, New York, 10924, to the Clerk of the Legislature, Jean Rampin, or submit via email to jramppen@orangecounty.gov.com. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, anyone wishing to speak, please sign up at the desk in the back of the chamber. And when your name is called, please come to the microphone, provide your name and town for the record. There will be a 3-minute limit for all speakers. Yielding of time to another speaker is not permitted. All comments will be addressed in writing. A transcript of this hearing will be made available to the public for review. Do we have any speakers? There are no speakers at this time. However, we will remain here until 9:30 in case anyone comes to speak. The time is now 9:30, and there have been no speakers. Before I conclude, I would just like to thank the sheriff's deputies for being here and sticking with us over this time period, and all the other participants who have made this possible. So at this time, I would like to declare this public hearing closed.